You may have realized that being healthy feels different than it did in the past now that you're over 50. If you want to maximize your health potential but don't have time to read through overwhelming pages of Google links, this is the show for you. Welcome to Healthy Tips After 50. We love doing the research, finding solutions, talking to health experts, and learning what works and what doesn't. Now, your host. She spent the last 25 years dedicated to feeling her best and is here to share her best findings with you, Susan Rosen.
Hello, everyone. This is your host, Susan Rosen. And my guest today is coming to us from Costa Rica. And he's going to tell us all about why he's there and what he does while he's there, since he lives there. So my guest is Yogi Aaron. And welcome. Do I call you Aaron or Yogi? I forgot to ask.
You can call me from here on. You can call me whatever you want. So Yogi or Aaron or Yogi Aaron, it's all good.
Or neither. Yeah, maybe I don't need to call you anything. Okay.
Hey,
welcome.
Just say hey.
hey, you over there.
Thanks for having me on, Susan.
Yeah.
Talk about yoga and all of these wonderful things.
Yes. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you ended up in Costa Rica to do your love, which must be yoga.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I've been doing yoga. So I'm 51 at this moment, turning 52 in about 2 months. And I started yoga when I was 18 years old, and just mostly like to just stretch. You know, I just kind of had this intuitive sense that my body was tightening up, and I was really, active, and I wanted to stay, as most people do, stay young and stay healthy. So I got into stretching yoga. And quickly, just as a side note, I ended up hurting myself, which led me on this deep chronic pain journey for the following 25 years. We can come back to that if you like,
yes.
But because that took me into the work that I do now. Yeah. But
then it's important to talk about. Yeah,
absolutely. Then I ended up moving to New York right around the age of 28. And that's where I basically started a yoga studio. I met my teachers. I would say that when I got into yoga, it was a very physical thing. I often refer to yoga then. It was really more of a physical stretching, kind of practice. When I met my teacher, Rod, he helped me to tear back the veil. I always say the veil between the seen and the unseen, into that whole sort of spiritual world, and opened up the possibilities of what yoga could be for me. Then I continued my studio in New York, and right when I turned to about 35, I was leading a yoga retreat to Costa Rica. And I had already at this point been leading several yoga retreats around the world, but one of them was to Costa Rica. And I was driving down this dirt road to the retreat center. It was an old dirt road in the middle of the jungle, but there just happened to be this Century 21 sign outside of this property. And I remember I looked through the gates, and there was this tunnel of bougainvilleas and hibiscus.
Oh my God.
And, like this kind of like archway, that, two lovers might walk, down at sunset or something.
Yeah,
but as I saw this tunnel, and I looked at the end of the tunnel, and there was this turquoise ocean. And I thought to myself, that would be a really nice place to live and have a yoga retreat. And voila. that's
be careful what you think about, right?
What you think about, you bring about. So that was back in 2007. I saw this property, and my business partner, who wasn't my business partner at the time, was with me, and I said, "Hey, do you want to do this together?" And he said, "Yeah." And so we embarked on this journey together. And
Wow.
he actually has become probably one of my most dearest friends. It's funny because business sometimes can drive people apart, business relationships.
Oh,
It
wow.
actually
Yeah.
has brought us closer together.
Oh,
Um,
great.
and we've just become very, best friends. And he yeah, and so this year that we're coming into 2024 will be our 15th year of being open at
Wow.
Bluosa. So it's
Wow.
hard to believe that. Like I say that number and I'm like, oh my God, what happened to the last 15 years? As I'm sure,
Yeah.
a lot of your listeners can relate to that. It's like, where did the time go?
Yeah. No kidding.
Yeah.
No kidding. Yeah.
So that's
Wow.
how I ended up in Costa Rica at a yoga retreat. That's the short story. Of course, there's a lot of, missing gaps, but
Well, yeah,
I've,
15 years worth, right?
but yeah, we bring a lot of people. We have a lot of different like yoga groups that come
Uh-huh.
here or fitness groups. We have a lot
Mm-hmm.
of different spiritual groups
Mm.
that come here. They bring their yoga groups. We have people that come for personal wellness, just getaways,
Oh, interesting.
um,
Yeah.
and or just kind of going through life changes and just need, a bit of a reset.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Mm-hmm.
we also have yoga teacher trainings, which is what I,
Oh,
lead a lot of the yoga
uh-huh.
teacher training immersions here. So doing the work that I love. I love leading them. It's much more pleasurable than running a business for me.
I can understand that. I can totally
Yes.
understand that. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Having been in the business world for,
Yes.
like 30 years or more. Yeah.
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 So as I was just talking
Mm-hmm.
about to you earlier, I ended up getting into yoga at a very young age and getting into the stretching thing. And
Uh-huh.
I I ended up hurting myself really quickly, actually. I think like with most people, I was dealing with chronic tight hamstrings. Couldn't
Yeah.
barely touch my toes, and so I
Oh,
just really embarked on this whole deep stretching.
right.
And of course, being a yoga teacher and being in the yoga world, I thought that stretching and yoga were tied and linked together. You had to
Mm.
open your body to become
Uh,
enlightened. And I ended up hurting, like as I said, hurting myself, but that
yeah.
ended up just happening again and again and again over a
Mm.
lot of time. And I just over 25 years, I dealt with a lot of just different chronic pain in my body, like deep chronic pain in my knees. By the time I was like 31, I had to hang up my hiking shoes. I was
Oh,
always having a lot of back problems, a lot of shoulder problems. And I go to different yoga teachers and I would say, hey, do you have a solution
yeah.
to my pain? And the answer was usually a variation of the same thing. We need to stretch more. We need to open your hips. Maybe you've got emotional blockages in your lower back. Yoga teachers, by the way, love to say that kind of stuff. You've got
Uh-huh.
emotional blockages. And so so by the time I
Okay.
was around 40, 44, 45, I ended up in the emergency room of a hospital with an orthopedic surgeon telling me that I might need a spinal fusion in my lower back.
Oh, gross. Yeah.
And that kind of made
That
me,
scared you, huh?
it put well, I mean, I was 44,
It woke
45
you
at the
up.
time. It woke me up. And I had already started hearing like whisperings of this idea that stretching was really bad for you. I
Mm.
had started to kind of hear like, oh, maybe you shouldn't stretch so much. And so I had started to already adjust, the way that I
Mm.
was teaching
Mm.
yoga quite a
Mm.
bit. As I was aging, as I was getting older, and my body was changing, the way
Mm.
that I was teaching started to change because I was like, I can't keep teaching
Yeah.
people the way I was teaching because that's just not,
Mm-hmm.
functional. And I want people to be functional life. So I started to kind of investigate more about why, how did I end up in this place in the emergency room of a hospital?
Yeah.
And that kind of journey took me into this idea of muscle activation.
Uh-huh.
And I went to school and I studied muscle activation technique mostly because I just wanted to learn about the body. I wanted to learn more about muscle function and
Mm.
try to start piecing together how did I end up in this predicament. And what I started to
Uh-huh.
learn and experience firsthand was when we stretch, we actually are shutting muscles down. And what we need to be
Oh,
doing is
interesting.
getting muscles to start working. And
Right.
so a lot of people have pain, I'm sure a lot of your listeners can relate to having pain in their backs or their knees or
Oh,
their
yeah. Huh.
hips or shoulders.
Yep.
Well, pain is a symptom or is a result of inflammation.
Hmm.
So, when we have pain, we go out, we rake the leaves, we mow the lawn, we do some gardening, we have pain because of inflammation. What do we take? We take
Uh-huh.
an anti-inflammatory.
Right.
Well, from a muscle standpoint, the pain is a symptom of stress. Stress causes inflammation. Well, why is the
Okay.
stress there? The stress is there because the joints of the body you know, are not being supported by the muscles.
Mm.
And so if we get the muscles working, the joints of the
Okay.
body are supported, and then the inflammation goes away. So
Interesting.
yeah. So then I started seeing how I could bridge this kind of idea of muscle activation and bring it into yoga. And so over the course of the pandemic, I had more time, as a lot of people
Gee.
did.
And you started
And
teaching your yoga over the video. Yeah.
I started teaching more online. But I
Uh-huh.
also was like, how can I leave? The big question I was asking was, stretching is making people weaker. That's not how I
Mm.
want my students to
Mm.
leave my classes. So, how can I have them leave stronger, more
Mm-hmm.
stable, and of course, pain free? And that's how I
Mm-hmm.
started to develop the style of yoga called AYAMA, Applied Yoga Anatomy and Muscle Activation. And so it's this kind of
Ah,
bridge of bringing a sense of how our body works. So teaching
okay.
people how the body works and then showing people how to get the muscles of their body activated. So for example, if you
Oh,
have pain in your hips, you can start to look at, okay, well, what are the hips doing? What muscles are attached to the hips? And then what muscle activations do I need to do? What do I need to do to get the muscles of the
mm,
hips working properly so my hips are
okay.
supported?
Uh-huh.
And that's what I do. I help people become pain free. And being a person that lived for almost 25 years in some degree or other of chronic pain, I'm
Yeah.
kind of making it my life mission to help people get out of pain, because we don't have to be in pain.
Yeah.
uh, we don't have to live with pain as much as we think we do. And so
Yes.
that's
Yes.
what I
Oh, yeah.
focus on.
Well, yeah, because there's this thing about oh well, you're getting older, so that's just normal. It's just
Yeah.
normal if you start having pain. And it's like, why? I don't, no. I don't like
Yes.
that.
Well, and so my teacher Greg would say that this idea of age in the body, let's just call it age in the body, and so as people get experience age in the body, usually what they're saying to you is, I have lost mobility. I do not
Yeah.
have as much mobility to
Yes, yes,
move.
yes,
I
yes.
don't have the mobility to
Mm-hmm.
do the
Mm-hmm.
things that I love to do, whatever that is.
Yeah.
Gardening, mowing the lawn, hiking. And so Greg would say that that is the result of the communication system in the body has been compromised. What he calls,
Ah,
or what
okay.
is called, the neuromuscular connection. So,
Uh-huh.
and it is true, as we age, we lose mobility. Well, what is that a
Mm-hmm.
symptom of? It's a symptom of stress, trauma, and overuse.
Mm.
And those three things start to have a negative impact in the communication system. So where we come in from muscle activation and why it's so profound is it either rebuilds that communication system or it builds it up. It makes that communication system stronger so that we do have that continued mobility in the body. And so the fact is like from a neuromuscular standpoint, we don't have to age. And again, we're defining age as a loss of mobility in the body.
Right.
So we don't have to lose that mobility. We don't have to get, age in the body if we keep that communication system strong. I'll give you one little example. Like when we look at people that are older and look old, well, how would we define that? I think you and I, and most of our listeners, your listeners would probably define that as somebody who is hunched over and does not have a lot of rotation in their upper body. Maybe, as again, we're defining it as people might, that have sort of look older. And that's when I was 18, what motivated me to kind of keep moving was because I would see like, if I want to stay young, I have to keep moving, right? I have to keep the mobility in my body.
Right. Yeah.
So one of my favorite, muscle activations is a simple muscle activation. So muscle activation is basically kind of doing an isometric exercise, but not for a long time. The magic number is 6 seconds. So you contract for something like contract a muscle for 6 seconds and do it 6 times. So one of my anti-aging poses is a pose which a lot of people call Superman pose. And you just lie on your stomach and then you lift your chest and you lift your legs off the ground. Well, what are you doing? You're engaging the muscles of the back. And so when you see somebody that's older, that's hunched over, what's happened? Well, gravity has basically pulled that person down. And so if we get the back muscles working, what do the back muscles do? It starts to defy the gravitational effects or that gravitational pull on our spine. So that's why, like, if your listeners just want a simple hack to do every day, like I'm always telling people, a Superman a day will keep the doctor away.
Oh, very nice. Okay, that's cute. Yes.
And so doing this one pose, because, I believe that youth is in the spine ultimately. If we keep our spine healthy, when I ended up in the hospital at 45, the doctor was saying, oh, you're going to need a spinal fusion. I could barely walk,
Yes.
And so I felt like what it was like to have that sort of hindrance, that lack of mobility in my spine. So keeping our spine strong and healthy from a neuromuscular standpoint, when I say strong, I don't mean like you need to go do 1,000 push-ups or,
lift, or
we're not talking about that stuff. We're just talking about simple movements that reinforces this neuromuscular connection, that keeps that communication system between the muscles and the brain, so that the muscles always have that ability to stabilize joints and move the body with ease.
Yeah. Oh no, that sounds great for sure. So when you say this Superman, I know I learned this like decades ago, but I haven't done yoga since I was probably in my 20s or 30s. So long time ago.
Yes.
So is it this way or that way?
Well, there's a couple of variations on Superman. The one that I tend to teach the most, especially for people that are just starting out, is to just keep the arms. So if you're lying on your stomach and your forehead is on the ground, you have your arms to the sides, lift the arms just a little bit off the floor. It's just a little bit, just to take the arms out of the pose, and then lift the chest up and lift the legs up as high as you can. And for a lot of your listeners, probably they won't be able to lift up that high, but that's not important. It's
what listeners, you're talking about me too.
Listen, that was me. When I got out of the hospital, I could barely
Oh,
lift
I
my
bet.
legs up, a quarter of an inch.
Mm-hmm.
So now I can lift up about 2 inches, maybe three on good days.
Uh-huh.
But that's
Yeah.
not the important thing. The important thing is that you're
No.
lifting up a bit. And
Mm-hmm.
and by doing that, you start engaging the muscles of your back. Your
Yeah.
back muscles are going to shorten. And when they shorten, that in and of itself will start to send messages to the brain saying, hey, there's a muscle here. The brain
Yeah.
sends back a message, goes, okay, contract. And so again, you're reinforcing this communication loop. And the reason why, like, I remember when I was in my early teens, I would hug my grandfather, and
Mm,
I
mm,
would
yeah.
remember patting him on the back, and it feeling like it was like a board, like a wall, like a
Yeah.
stiff
Okay.
wall. And
Uh-huh.
that's because the muscles are not working anymore. The muscles have lost their ability to
Is it
contract
like
and
atrophying? Are they
atrophy. They just start
atrophying?
to
Yeah.
atrophy, and when they
Yeah.
atrophy, then it just becomes stiff.
Yeah.
And so what these exercises, what these simple muscle activations do is it just gets those muscles out of that atrophy state. It starts to build that neuromuscular connection, and over time they just get to
Mm-hmm.
get stronger. And so what I
Mm-hmm.
say to your listeners and you is, if
Yes.
do that pose for 30 days. Just do it
Okay.
every day. It doesn't take
Uh-huh.
long. 6 seconds, six
Yeah.
times is not a lot of time. I
Do
feel
you
like
do,
it's a
okay,
good
do you do the six,
negotiation.
yeah, really, do you do the six times all at one time or during the day or,
No, 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 all at once.
all at
So
one
you
time?
you
Okay.
do it six
Okay.
seconds.
Six
So
seconds, six times. Hmm.
any kind of muscle activation that you would do it 6 seconds, come down, take a breath, and then come back up, do it another 6 seconds. So when you count
Okay.
6 seconds, 1,000, 2,
Two,
1,000,
1,000.
3,
Yeah.
1,000, 4,
Right.
1,000, or 5 Mississippi, 6 Mississippi.
Yeah.
Whatever
We
floats
are
your
dating
boat.
ourselves now, aren't we?
And the court, are there other things you could do? Absolutely. But
Yeah. That's just to
it's
start. Yeah. If
just
you're
to
not
start.
a yoga person. Yeah.
Well, if you're not a movement based person,
Well, that's true. Yeah.
and
Yeah. I
some
mean, I do.
people,
Yeah. I walk. I walk a
yeah.
lot. Yeah.
Well, what I would
Yeah.
say is, if you can do this, Susan,
Uh-huh.
before you go for a walk, you're going to feel
Oh,
very different, because you probably start your walk with a lot of muscles not working properly. What this
okay.
pose does is it engages your hamstrings, it engages your glutes, it engages, your
Wow.
back
Okay.
muscles. So now you're actually going to start your walk stronger. And one of the ideas of muscle activation is that if you start doing something like walking from a stronger
Uh-huh.
state, you actually will get stronger. If you start from a
Okay.
weakened state,
Uh-huh.
you actually can get weaker. So if you can do this before you go for your walks, I think you're going to start to notice a difference in
Okay.
your walks over time. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'll try that. I'll try that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, as
Um,
Master Yoda would say, do or don't do. There is no try.
you're right. You're right. And
So do
yeah.
it every day
And
for,
then
like I said, 30
yeah.
days, and see how you feel. You will
Yeah.
notice a huge difference. Huge difference.
Okay. Okay. That sounds good. That sounds good. So tell me, how are you getting all of this wonderful information out into the world?
Well, I have a YouTube channel. It's got over 200 videos, so people can access me
Okay.
there.
That's great.
People can go to my website. I have a website, yogiaaron.com, which I hope you'll include in the show
Yes, in the
notes.
show notes. Yes,
Um,
for sure.
and I also have a book called Stop Stretching. So people can go on Amazon and look for
Uh-huh.
my book. It's got all of,
Okay.
like, that pose, Superman pose I was telling you about. I have a lot of different kind of just simple muscle activations
Uh-huh.
that people can
Yeah.
do in their own home. One of the things that's really cool is that, outside of course, buying my book, if people want to do that,
Of course.
or,
Uh-huh.
accessing different things, this really is free. I mean, it doesn't cost you anything to, go down onto the floor and do these muscle activations. And
Uh-huh.
that's the really cool thing about this. So I have a lot of free content. Part of the book, the intention of the book was to give people like a manual, an
Yeah.
easy to understand manual. I can't stress that enough. Like it's really easy to
Yes.
understand, because for me, anatomy has always been my weak spot. Like people talk about hip
Mm.
flexors and I'm like, hip what?
Yeah, right. Right.
Or back extensors, and I'm like, what are you talking about? So my goal is to give people a very easy to follow guide with their body, so that they can start to understand their body and just apply it
Mm.
to themselves. And then, if people go to my website, they have access into how to start taking a pain-free journey themselves. So I have a
Oh,
lot of
okay.
solutions to people's pains. I'm sure that a lot of your listeners are dealing with, some of your listeners are dealing with chronic pain, either in their backs or their
Oh my
hips.
God, yeah.
So if they want to check out what I'm doing, we can get that fixed. One of
Yes.
the probably, I've had a lot of people email me in the last year, especially since my book came out,
Uh-huh.
um, and just really kind of saying some very beautiful things in their journey. But I think
Mm.
one of the most beautiful testimonials that I've received is from a 70-year-old gentleman who is from Norway. And he proceeded to write this, essay on his whole, journey with yoga, and, dealing with his inflexibility, dealing with his chronic pain, dealing with being shamed in
Mm.
yoga classes from different teachers.
Oh
And
no.
it was really
Really?
quite sad.
How
Yeah. And
disgusting.
it very disgusting.
Yeah.
But that aside, that's a whole other
Yeah.
conversation. But
Yeah,
but
right.
that aside, he basically just said to me, like, this is the first time I've been able to get rid of pain in my body.
Oh my
And
God.
it's been a real treat to work with your information.
Mm.
And of course, one of the things that he is a doctor, and so he works a lot with people. He's an
Oh
osteopath,
my goodness. Yeah.
and so he's just so excited to bring
Yeah.
this and start applying this, because he's
Uh-huh.
experienced the benefits, and he
Yeah.
can start helping other people. And so it's just a testimony, like, this stuff works. But the very first word in AYAMA, which is what I teach, is
Uh-huh.
applied. So you have to apply it to your life.
Gee, you think? You mean if I just read the book, it's not going to work?
You got to actually do it. So you got to take that, 6 seconds, 6 times to do Shalavasana.
Yes, exactly. You mean it won't work if I just buy it, look through it, and stick it up on the
Exactly.
shelf with my other books?
Yes. Well, the cool thing about my book too is that I give
Mm.
a lot of different exercises, and they're very easy to
Mm.
follow. It's not,
Okay.
hard to follow. It's very easy to follow. So
Uh-huh.
people can, access a lot of pain solutions for their pain in their body.
Oh no, that sounds great. Yeah, I keep having problems like with my arm
Yes.
and stuff, and they do x-rays and they say, well, there's nothing wrong. And it's like, no, 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 hurts right there.
Yes. Yes.
There's
Well,
one
and
place right there.
yeah. Well, we can fix that.
Will the Superman fix that? Maybe,
It
huh?
probably will start to have an effect. I mean, just practically speaking, so much pain that is in the shoulders, the
Yeah.
elbows, wrists, knees, ankles, feet.
Mm.
So much of that is because the big muscles are not doing their job. And so again, stress
Okay.
If the big muscles aren't doing their job to stabilize joints and move bones properly, then the stress starts to go out distally
Okay. Yeah.
to the limbs of the body. So yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Maybe it will, maybe it won't, but
Yeah.
from a muscle activation standpoint, we always start with the big muscles first and then start to move out, because if
Okay.
the big muscles aren't
Makes
working,
sense.
that's going to put more stress on the smaller joints
Right.
of the body for sure.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
No, that makes sense.
yeah.
Okay. Okay. I'll try it. I'll try
Yes.
it.
Well, and let
Yeah.
me ask you a question. You
Uh-huh.
were talking a bit about some of your projects around the house. Do you do a lot of also gardening as well? A lot of yard work?
God, no.
No.
No, no way. Not happening. Not happening. In fact, we have very little. We have very little. The front is all take. We live in a big community,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they are individual houses, and everybody owns that.
Yeah.
And the front is all taken care of as part of our dues, so
Yes.
that's good. And the back is up to each individual homeowner. And we have some tile, and we have a wood deck, and we have a lot of weeds around
Yes.
the outside of it. That's about it. Yep. No,
Okay. Well,
no,
when you're
not.
moving around the house and you're doing different
Yes, there you
things,
go.
and you're doing whatever it is that you're doing, again,
Yeah,
if your back muscles aren't working properly,
yeah.
then other things, other parts of your
Oh,
body
yeah.
are going to move you. And so, all the muscles around the elbow joint are these smaller muscles, and they end
Hmm.
up trying to overwork to stabilize your whole
Okay.
torso.
Okay.
So absolutely, like I said,
Interesting.
a Superman a
Yeah.
day can keep the doctor away.
Okay. Okay. You convinced me. I'll try it. I will definitely try it. I just have to find a place where I can actually lie down on the floor the whole time. But
Sure.
we've been in this house so long, that we're going through and kind of, well, I mean, I have a lot of books. My husband's got like 10 times more than I do. And it's just, it's kind of like, okay, getting to that age where no way I'm going to get back to that book. So,
Yes.
you know, yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah. Just, it's interesting how one's attitude isn't the right word, but the way you look at life, how it
Mm-hmm.
changes as you get older and you
Mm-hmm.
have less and less years ahead.
Priorities change, and
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah, yeah.
absolutely. The
Interesting.
small things don't
Interesting.
really matter anymore.
No, no, exactly. Exactly. We used to travel a lot. We hardly do that anymore. And so,
Yeah.
but COVID kind of stopped that. And then it just was so nice being at home. We never started back up again.
Well, maybe if we get some muscles activated, you'll feel a little bit more spring in your step. Who
There
knows?
you
Who
go.
knows what will happen from that Superman pose?
Exactly. Exactly. Well, I'll tell you my biggest problem, actually, and it not that they hurt me, but I don't pick my feet up when I walk.
Mm,
I've been trying really hard to concentrate on that and
yeah.
do some exercises, for picking the feet up. But yeah, I mean, I've taken many, 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 many falls, and it's
Wow.
just it's just from cracking the sidewalk and my
Yep.
stoop, and down I go.
Yeah. Well,
So
I mean, I would, it
interesting.
would be interesting to do a mobility assessment with you, but again,
Mm,
just getting muscles, if muscles aren't
yeah.
working, then
Oh,
the body
yeah.
starts doing, funny
Yeah.
things. And we can, like I said, we
Exactly.
can often correct a lot of that just by getting that
Right.
neuromuscular connection working. And I think a lot of the listeners listening we get to a certain age where there's just numbing in the body, or we just stop feeling certain things, or our sense of proprioception of where our body is in space changes. And I think for me, as I've gotten older, and especially after I ended up in the hospital, one of the things that it started happening with me is not trusting my body. And I think one of the compliments or testimonials that has come back, feedback from people who have been doing this, is that they feel, and I experience this a lot with myself, is I just feel more confident in my body. I have more confidence. And so we can't get that back. And so again, Superman's a great one. Of course, there's some other things, but it would be fascinating to use you as a test subject to see, like, doing certain things and how that affects, you over time. It'd be the perfect test subject, Susan.
Oh my God. Okay. Well, we'll talk afterwards. Exactly. Yes. Well, that's probably a good place to kind of wrap up here, I think, since we've been talking for quite a while. And so I will put all of the information into the show notes that we talked about. I have it all in there that you had sent me.
Yes.
So any final, here's another tip kind of thing, or just
I can give tons of tips, but what I would just say to your listeners is just, so many of us, well, there's a few things that we buy into, but I think one of them is that we buy into, like, that as we're getting older, that we just are going to have to deal with age. And if we define age as this loss of mobility, that's just something that we can turn the clock on. And I've witnessed it many times over with my own eyes, with people who have experienced muscle activation, and it gives them a new lease on life. And and we don't have to live with pain. And so if your listeners take away anything from this conversation, it's like, the answer is out there. And I would really encourage them to check out, these things that I'm doing, reach out to me privately if they want to, but there are solutions, and we don't have to live with pain, and we can continue living a more, I'll use this word, mobile life. Thank you so much for having me on too. I really appreciate this opportunity.
Well, thank you. And I'm going to do my usual at the end, which is that neither of us are doctors, and this is not to be seen as medical advice. And with that, I will be seeing everybody else next week.
This has been Healthy Tips After 50 with Susan Rosen. To stay on the cutting edge of the most effective health strategies, subscribe to this podcast and let us know what you thought of the show with a comment or like on iTunes. Visit healthytipsafter50.com for this episode's show notes, more resources, and free offers.